Do you get to do and train for these things full time?
I feel like if running was my only job and my hobby and everything, I would put way too much pressure on myself to perform.
And I'm curious what your relationship to failure is.
At some point, when you fail that many times in a row, you start questioning if this sport is good for you.
Welcome to the show. Thank you for taking part in this immersive listening experience. A meaningful existence is a moving target that, no matter how close, will always be out of reach. We hope this message finds you with an outstretched hand. As we attempt to uncover complex truths, remember, life's toughest questions can be answered if we all just focus on one thing: being good people.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Good People, episode 28. Today, I was joined by ultra running athlete Lotti Brinks. In today's episode, we talked about her recent victory at the Grindstone 100K, where she received her golden ticket for Western States. Today, we talked about how she got her start in ultra running, her perspective on failure, the power of visualization, and much more. Before we begin, if you are watching on YouTube, please leave a comment confirming that I do in fact look like a Sith Lord. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our weekly episodes. Enjoy the show. Let's get it started with, I'm really excited to do this because I've only ever seen you in person for like 15 and a half seconds. And so I'm really excited to get to learn a bit more about you. But let's start by giving us a quick 180-second rundown of your life thus far.
Yeah, so I grew up in Germany. That's where I'm from. That's where the accent comes from. And I moved to the States in 2014 to go to school there. I studied product design in Savannah, Georgia, at a little art school there. And yeah, my life kind of just unraveled from there. I met my husband there. That's where I really started running competitively for college. And yeah, ended up quickly thereafter moving to Austin. And Austin is where I started trail running, which is weird of all places because Austin is not known for its trail culture. But that's where I started. And yeah, that's kind of where my love for the trails really ignited. And then a couple years later, I got tired of not having mountains around, not having the best trail access. I realized there are many better places to do this sport. So that's when we ended up moving to Boise, Idaho, which is where I am now. So me, my husband, our 2 dogs happily live in Boise now, right by the foothills.
Very good. What did your life look like growing up? Did you play sports? Did you run when you were younger?
So in Germany, sports don't work the same as they do here. Mm-hmm. We don't really have organized like high school or middle school or just like school teams, I guess. So I guess the first sport I got into was volleyball, and it was more so like an after school with your friends, you just kind of throw the ball around and just have fun. So it wasn't very competitive at all. Half of the times teammates didn't show up because they had something else to do. So it was always kind of like if it works out, it works out. I did that for maybe 2 years or so. And then the way I got into running was a little odd, I guess. My biology teacher at the time, he was just trying to teach us a lesson about like fast twitch and slow twitch muscles. And we got out of the classroom and onto the track. And we're just like running around. And he was actually a coach at a local club. So he eventually was like, hey, you seem to really enjoy this. You should come join this track and field club. So I did. Little did I know that I was the only distance runner there. Everyone else was doing like, sprints or jumping or anything like that. So I was a club of one at this local track and field club. But that's how I got into running.
Was that still while you were in Germany?
Yeah, that was in Germany.
Okay. What age were you when you first got into it?
like 16, I think.
Okay, very good. It's funny you bring up like the fast and slow twitch muscle fibers. I always joke that I have medium twitch muscle fibers. That's not a thing, but like I'm not very fast, and I can run like a long distance, but I'm also not very good at that. You know, if there was, I feel like rucking it would be a good example of something that I'm made for. You know, I'm like a bigger guy for a runner,
Mhm.
anyways, and a little bit of weight for a kind of a long time is sort of where I excel.
Yeah, I wanted really badly to be a fast twitch person. I really wanted to just do like the 100 dash or the 200 or hurdles. I thought that was so cool, but that's
Y-
just not me.
Yeah, and it would be easier too because it's over in like 30 seconds.
Yeah, it was great.
Instead, you have to run multiple hours through the night in trails.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know at the time that that's where I was going to end up.
Yeah.
At the time, I was like, I'm going to run for 2 minutes, the 800, or maybe the 1500, and that's it. No more.
I know you said when you moved to Austin is when you got into trail running. What did that look like? What was your first race? Can you bring me back to those moments?
Yeah. So, I mean, I did a lot of hiking growing up in Germany. Like, we lived really close to the Alps. So, we would do a lot of hikes, like in southern Germany, like Austria, northern Italy. We would be in the mountains all the time, but it didn't occur to me that I could just run the trails. So I really did only start trail running in Austin, and it's like there are good trails there. Like I want to give credit where it's due. Like there's some really fun trails in Austin. They're just very short. Like they're all in little state parks, so you have to do a lot of loops unless you want to drive for a really long time. So yeah, my first race in Austin was the Bandera 50K in 2021. I actually took a pretty long break from running after college. I stopped running competitively for about 5 years due to some injuries, and I just had life to figure out after college. So I only really picked it up again in end of 2020, beginning of 2021. And that was also kind of, pandemic time where I had just all the time in the world to just be outside and play on the trails. And that's like when I first discovered the trails in Austin. Before that, I was just like running from my house, just getting some miles in. And then during the pandemic, I was really seeking out the trails and driving to state parks and trying to like map routes on Strava and all of that. So that started in like 2021, I think is when I really got into it.
Okay. It seems like you've had a very quick rise to sort of where you are now. And I'm excited to get into, some of these more recent races with you. But when you started running in 2021, was it always this, I'm going to try to win these things right from the jump?
No, I mean, I didn't know what I was doing really. I kind of just hopped into it with kind of like an ignorance is bliss kind of mindset. I Now that I look back at that race, I'm like, there are so many things that I did wrong, and I could have done it so much better. But it was more so I came to it more so from let's see how far I can go, let's see how long I can be out there. It's treated like an adventure kind of angle. Like I didn't sign up for Bandera to win it. I had no idea what it was going to be like. I've never been on the course before. I drove there the morning off at like 3 a.m. and had no expectations. I just wanted to have fun and see if I can do it. I had no idea if I could do it. So that was the main goal. It was never, in the beginning, it was never about winning or being fast in any shape or form.
How did you end up performing in that race? Do you remember?
I did win that race. It was, I didn't plan to, but that was a very, very, very cold year in Austin, in Texas. Bandera is a Texas race. And I think that was kind of to my benefit. Like everyone expected it to be hot and humid and all the, what you would expect of Texas weather. And it was freezing cold and we had hail, it snowed. I think everyone was just kind of shocked by that. There were a lot of people who dropped because of hypothermia and all of that. So I was just I had tunnel vision. I just wanted to get to the finish. And I had no idea where I placed until I crossed the finish line. So it ended up going great, I guess, but it was very much about the adventure, and the weather kind of just added to it. Like I was running through the hail and was like, this is what I wanted. I wanted to like go through all these crazy conditions and just test myself in an environment like that.
Yeah. Was it after that race, like you had this success with it, that you sort of said to yourself, okay, now I can really push myself in this way. Like I'm clearly have a talent for this or a gift for this in some aspect. And I want to see how far I can push it.
Yeah, I think after that race, it was still not quite about winning races. After that race, it was about how much further can I go? Because there was a 50K. And a couple days after that race, I signed up for my first 100K, which was just 3 weeks later in February. That was the Rocky Raccoon 100K. And that was the race where I realized I kind of have a knack for this. Like I want to be competitive, because it wasn't the most competitive race itself. It's kind of the little sister race to the 100-miler that happens there. So it wasn't necessarily super competitive, but I ran a pretty fast time, which kind of sparked that competitive fire in me. Like after I ran that race, I really wanted to see how I could do in a really like stacked field.
How did you end up finishing in that Rocky Raccoon?
I ran 8 hours and 40 minutes or something for the 100K, and I won it. So yeah, that was the first time where I realized I'm good at this. I want to kind of pursue it.
I would just like to say this. I'm throwing myself under the bus here. I ran a 50K last year and it took me 6 hours flat, like just under 6. So like that's extremely impressive to me that you were able to do that. And I mean, granted, I've never signed up for a race. I haven't even done that many of them. I've done like 3 or 4 ultras, 50Ks, 50 milers, 100 miler. And I've never been like, I'm going to see how hard I can. It's always been like, I'm going to finish. I don't care if it's a minute before the cap, which is totally fine. It's never been about that for me. It's similarly, it's always just been, can I do this thing? I'm not sure. And the 100 miler to me was the first one that I ever did that I seriously was like, I have no idea if I'm going to finish this. And that was, It was a cool adventure to sort of figure that out. That's so funny that you just sign up and you were winning them from the beginning.
I mean, I had a running background, I guess. So it didn't just like happen overnight. Like I was not a great, but I was a decent runner in college. So I knew that I could at least like just try and run my race. And if it works out well, it does. But even to this day, like my A goal is always to finish. Like of course I want a podium, I want to win, I want to do good, I want to qualify for other races. But at the end of the day, you have to finish to do any of these things. And it's always a fine line. Like if you push yourself just a little too hard in the beginning, there is a chance that you don't finish. So just finishing, making it to that finish line, no matter how fast or slow, is always the main goal.
Yeah. And I think that that's pretty consistent when it comes to the ultra running space. Everybody that does ultra marathoning, they're like the nicest human beings in the world. And everybody's just like, yeah, whatever. We're all just out here, trying to get this thing done. And it's just as horrible for everybody involved, whether you come in first or you come in last. Yeah. And CrossFit communities like that, I'm a CrossFit coach, where a lot of times, the person who's finishing last gets the loudest cheers. And the ultra running community is another community that's like that, which is one of the reasons why I think it's such a special thing to be a part of at times.
Yeah, I love going to races when I don't race, because it's just so, like, no matter if I'm watching the person who breaks the tape or the last person, it's always inspiring because they all have different stories. They all sort of went through the same thing on the course, but not really. It's always, everyone has a different experience. and just watching it go down is always like amazing to me. I love watching everyone race, no matter fast or slow or front or back of the pack. It's always inspiring.
Yeah, and I'll even share this. I think that from my own interaction with you, that was very clear to me. I did Grindstone 100 miler last year when it was just a 100 miler. It wasn't yet a UTMB series race. So
Mm-hmm.
while we were running it last year, the guy who I was running it with and I were like, dude, we've got to come back out here and do an aid station, because I think it was like mile 80 for us. But there was one aid station that I was in horrible shape, but I just left it because there was a bunch of guys there like, dude, I'm going to meet you at the finish line and we're going to have a beer together. And they were just so uplifting and funny that I was like, I want to be that for somebody at some point. And it was just a cool way to give back to this thing that meant a lot to me. And we were out there this past year. The 100-mile runners came through. The first guy came through at 12:30 a.m. and the last guy came through our station at 6:30 a.m. So we were up all night long. Like
Wow.
I got an hour or two of sleep before. And then the 100K runners, you guys came through. The first person came through at 10:30 a.m. and then the last person came through at 3:30 p.m. So it was pretty much just like I pulled an all-nighter and I felt horrible. And I remember you coming through. I don't even know what time it was, but there's a thing a lot of ultra runners have where they're just so thankful and grateful to be out there. Like the best ultra runners to all the aid station people are always so much like, thank you guys so much for being out here. It really means a lot that you're supporting me in this. And I remember you coming through with like this big smile on your face, just happy to be out there. And you said it to all of us, like, thank you guys so much for being out here. And then because you won, you didn't stay for very long and you just kind of headed on down the trail. But being a part of that aid station, and it's just always a treat when you get commended by the runners for being out there, because, it's in a weird way, you feel like you're out there to support them. And so to get the support back feels good.
Yeah. And I mean, none of these races would happen without volunteers at the aid stations, especially this one. I came by myself. I didn't have really anyone with me or any crew. I had my friend Rachel's husband was helping me out a little bit, like last minute, but I was relying heavily on the aid station volunteers. And the least I can do for them helping me out is to say thank you as I run by. So thank you for being out there.
That's always so impressive to me. We interviewed Greg Sissengrath. He's run like 8 or 900 milers, has done Cocodona 250, been an ultra runner for like 10 years. He's a coach. And he does that all the time. He just like flies out with his gels and his running belt, and he runs these ultras by himself, supported by the aid station. That's always so impressive to me, because the only reason I did 100 miles is because one of my friends agreed to do it with me. And like I had a pacer out there and my crew was out there to support me. So it's just cool that you sort of have the resolve to put yourself in those sort of situations. Because I don't know about you, but it's like the scariest thing for me ever when I'm about to run for the next 30 hours. Like, this is that's a horrible thing to feel.
Yeah, I love having pacers and a crew. It's like a big party. It helps you through. But for me, I also realized this year that sometimes I just gotta do things by myself, for myself. Like running has always been kind of my outlet where it's just time for myself, where I can think, where I can just do what I need to do. So in some way, it's also kind of liberating to do these things by yourself. I don't like I can be out there all day, and I don't want people waiting for me if I have a bad day. I don't want it's almost good to not have anyone to complain to sometimes, because then you can, if you don't have anyone to complain to about or say like, oh, everything hurts, you just kind of have to suck it up. And sometimes that's actually helpful for me to not have as many people around. But I also agree that it's way more fun to have a big crew, to have pacers, and they can really pull you out of a low patch too.
Yeah. I think for me, if I get a little bit more experienced with it, it would be something that I could do for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to that point, 100% I could just go run a 50K by myself. would be no problem. I think maybe it's just comfortability with doing it,
Yeah.
and having done more. Like, for example, I probably literally would have died if I did my 100 miler by myself, because there was this 3 mile section where I was sleep running, and I think I would have probably ran myself off the mountain if I
Yeah.
was alone,
That's not
which can
good.
happen, you know?
Yeah.
So I just need to, I think if I were to do something like that, I would need to build up a bit more confidence that things like that wouldn't happen.
Yeah. And I think there's also a big difference between just running during the day and running through a night. Like if you run through sleep deprivation and it's dark and it's cold and you might need like all the layers, shoe changes, all of that, it's really helpful to have a team to help you out and just to look forward to after a long night in the dark. So
Yeah.
I mean, for 100 milers, I would always choose to bring a crew if I can.
Yeah. And I think this one in particular, because it starts at 6 p.m. on a Friday. So, like, this particular instance for me was the second night that I was experiencing. So I was, the sun wakes you up by the time the day rolls around, but to go into the second night, you're pretty exhausted.
Yeah.
That's a good challenge, though. Have you ever done anything like that was overnight like that, or started right when it started to get dark?
I did UTMB last year. It didn't end up very good, but I did run through the night. It started at, I think, 6, maybe 5. So it's very challenging. It was really hard for me to start in the evening, and then because you never really sleep well the night before a race, and then
Yeah.
I'm not a person who can nap, so I'm already kind of sleep deprived going into the race. And then I start the race and it's just dark for many hours. And I make it to, like at UTMB, the sun kind of came up going into Courmayeur, which is at mile 50, I want to say. And at that point, I was just drained. I was just so tired. I just wanted to sleep. So, yeah, I don't know if I'm a big fan of evening starts. I think I like morning starts better.
Yeah, I thought I would like it, but because I'm not very fast, I thought I'd finish before the sun went down the second time, but I didn't. And then I was running to like 4 a.m. Sunday. And
Yeah,
so
it's
it was
so
pretty
hard.
brutal.
Yeah.
If you're fast, I think it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, either way, you're gonna have to run through the night. If it's a like hard mountainous race, there's always going to be some nighttime running.
Yeah.
If it's 100 miler.
Do you have any specific races that sort of stand out to you in your memory? Like, I understand that there's probably each one holds its own place for you in terms of what you've learned from it and taken from it. But off the top of your head, is there one that really stands out as memorable?
Yeah, that's a tough question because they're all kind of memorable in their own ways. This year, I really hold the. It wasn't like the most competitive race, but I hold the Tillamook 50 miler close to my heart. It was one of those races where I just kind of drove there the night before, like just I don't know, kind of winged it. It was not really. I didn't really prepare much for it. I went out there by myself, but that was sometimes those races are the best because you really connect with the community there and with the aid station volunteers, and it was really lovely how they cheered me on and they helped me get through. And I ran a really good race. Like it wasn't anything like crazy that gets a lot of media attention or anything like that because it wasn't necessarily like a stacked field or anything. But I'm really proud of the way I ran that race. Like I just stayed positive the whole way and pushed through all the way until the finish. And even though I knew I had it in the bag, I still kept pushing. And that's something that I'm proud of. And that one was just such a nice race. It was so beautiful. It was like kind of, like a typical Pacific Northwest race. It was drizzling a little bit, but then the sun came out. There were rainbows. It was very green and lush. It was beautiful. And I really like that race organization really does an awesome job. Daybreak Racing. I've done a couple of the races and every single one of them has been amazing.
Very good. What's one of the main reasons why you keep going back out and doing these ultra runs?
Part of it is that I want to know how far I can go and how much I can push myself. A big part of it is just doing something for myself. It's more like signing up for a race is almost like it sounds silly, but it's almost like a gift for myself. Because I put in all the work every day. I, train hard, I work hard, and a race is kind of the celebration of that. So I just love going out there. And I mean, I'm always nervous before races, but I'm also always excited that I get to do this and I get to celebrate and like reap the benefits from all the work that I've put in over the past, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. And that's an awesome feeling. And I love that. And that's part of the reason why I race. The other reason is just the community and seeing friends over the past 2 years. Yeah, like since I started this, I've made so many friends in the trail running like scene that it's always amazing to see them at races. Like the community is pretty tight knit and people show up to the same races. So even though we're all kind of spread across the country, we all come together to all these different races. So seeing friends, hanging out together, racing together, going through some hard patches together, that's part of why I do this, is because this community is just very encouraging, supportive. They all strive to be their best. And that's just something that inspires me to be better every day, whether it's within running or just normal life.
Yeah. That's a really unique perspective, that it's almost like a gift that you're able to give yourself. And I would even second with the community thing. And it's so silly for me when I think about it, how much joy it brings me to, for example, with CrossFit coaching, I've sort of embedded myself in a community all over the United States and some parts of Canada because of the group that I'm connected with through my gym. And we do like an annual coaches conference. And when that's coming up, we usually do it in July, I think. I just get so excited to travel and get to see all these people again. And similarly, the guy Greg, who I was referencing earlier, I had him on the show a couple episodes ago, and I didn't even know he did Grindstone last year, and he came back and did it again this year. And I didn't even know that until the episode. We literally recorded the podcast 3 days before the race. And I told him, I was like, dude, I'll save you a Red Bull, because he was coming through at like 2 a.m. And
Nice.
that's like my fondest memory of that experience, is just like the whole time looking at everybody's faces, just shining my light in the pitch black, waiting for Greg. And when he finally came up, I was like, Greg. And he was like, whoa, what? Like he didn't know it was me. I was like, do you want your Red Bull? And he was like, oh, holy shit, Joel. Yes, that would be awesome. Because it was
I
like
love
horrible
that.
conditions.
Yeah.
It was like rainy and everybody was having a hard time getting through. But that's like my favorite memory from that experience. And just to be able to share that because of being connected to him through the online ultra space is such a cool gift that I wouldn't have otherwise gotten to experience.
Yeah. And it's almost always immediate friends. Like a lot of people I meet through, social media, or I look them up before races, or they look me up and we just reach out to each other. And we're like instant friends. And then you see each other at races or any type of events. And you don't even have to race. Like next weekend, I'm going down to Arizona to pace at the Javelina 100. And it's not even my race, but I'm so excited because I get to see so many people that I don't see very often, because they're, technically online friends, I guess. But as soon as we see each other in person, it's like instant, like we have so many things in common. We're instant friends. And it's just very lovely. And it's just always fun to be like in the community and not just in a bubble, like somewhere on your phone.
Yeah. Do you get to do and train for these things full time?
No, I do. I work in the creative field. I work in design, and I love my job. I love being creative. So it's something I don't even if I had the opportunity to train full-time and be a full-time professional runner, I guess, I don't think it would serve me that well, because I am a person who, like, I kind of get into my own head and put a lot of pressure on myself. And I feel like if running was my only, not only purpose in life, but you know what I mean, like my only, like my job and my hobby and everything, I would put way too much pressure on myself to perform. And then it's hard when you get injured, and eventually people get injured or have rough races. I feel like I would not do very well in that, like if running was my full-time job. I thought about it. It sounds fun, but I don't think it would serve me personally very well.
Yeah. That's an interesting perspective, because I feel like anybody who is an athlete, especially, the thought is, if I could just get to a point where I could dedicate everything that I have to this one thing, I wonder how good I could be.
Mhm.
But I think that perspective that you're sharing is very understated at times, that potentially these creative outlets or other aspects of our life that we care about, but maybe not as much or differently than the athletic side of us, could actually be making us a better athlete, and they probably are. And
Yeah.
so it's cool of you to share that, almost like this creative thing and aspect that you have probably makes you a better runner and probably makes those experiences even more valuable.
Yeah, I agree. I think it heavily depends on the person and their day job, I guess. Like if I was working 80 hours a week in a job where I was saving lives or something that puts a lot of pressure on me, I probably wouldn't feel the same way. But I work a remote job from home that's very flexible. That's like I'm not out here saving lives by making pretty designs or managing my creatives. Like it's a very low stress kind of job, which allows me to go on long runs during the week or do things like that, and it's fine. So I see it from that perspective. It might be completely different for someone who, works a really high pressure job where there are lots of things at stake. So for me, it's like even if I had more time, I wouldn't be doing more. Like I'm already getting in my miles. I have enough time to do, strength training or PT, even though I don't want to do it. So it's like I don't need more time in the day to focus on running, I guess.
Very good. I think something that I haven't really talked to a lot of the ultra distance athletes that I've had on this podcast about, but it's a really important part of racing, both from my personal experience. It's an important part of life, which is failure. And I'm curious what your relationship to failure is.
Yeah, I had a pretty hard year last year. So 2021 is when I got into the sport, and I had a pretty good rookie season. Like we talked about Bandera and Rocky Raccoon, and they were all like every single race was great. Like I was very much still in this like honeymoon phase with running where everything was great, everything was fun, no hiccups whatsoever. And then 2022 rolled around, and I had all these like weird things happen at races, and that's when I started signing up for like the more competitive ones. And every single time something weird happened. One time I dislocated my kneecap. Another time I had COVID before the race and basically couldn't breathe. It was bad. Another time I had rhabdo, like that was at UTMB. That's why I said that didn't go so well. So 2022 there were some good races in there, but it was definitely tough to keep going back because I just had a lot of tough races and tough decisions to DNF or see like what can I do better? Why is this going so terribly? And then also like at some point when you fail that many times in a row, and it's like not like failure where I'm just like where I just don't want to do it. It's like every single time something happened that when like my body was breaking down or something weird was happening that was not really healthy, you start questioning if this sport is good for you. So yeah, 2022 was riddled with failure. And I think the way I got through it is to stop putting so much pressure on myself. And like, that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, to kind of start doing it for myself. And I started signing up for some races that, where there's not so much at stake, I guess. And I didn't, like, I just started out more conservatively. I took all the precautions to not run into the same problems. Like, rhabdo is something that's kind of scary. It's where your like kidney kind of fails eventually.
Yeah, your muscles eat themselves.
Basically, and that was very scary at UTMB, which is why they pulled me. And that I carried that around with me for a while, because every single time I got a little dehydrated or I started like feeling it, it freaked me out. So yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this. I think it's more so, failure is like, you need to fail every now and then to become better, and you can learn from failure. I mean, that's a cliche thing to say, but it's true. It's not like, none of these things I really could influence it. They were all kind of freak incidents that happened, and I just had to accept it and move forward. But there are things that I can do to avoid that, and that might be, more body work, like more strength training to become stronger, to not just pop my kneecap out, or make sure that I like fix my nutrition and hydrate better to avoid rhabdo. It's things like that. And I mean, this year, nothing crazy has happened. So knock on wood that I learned from my mistakes. And there are gonna be more mistakes. I'm gonna have bad races moving forward. I think the important thing is to just like see what went wrong, note down the takeaways, and try to improve next time.
Yeah, I heard a very interesting perspective on this that I'll share with you. It seems pretty relevant. And I'm 23 years old, so I'm very sort of new to. I started coaching CrossFit when I was 19, so I'm like 4 years into this thing, right? And I've always put a lot of pressure on myself as a person. Like, if I don't achieve this by this time, I'm a failure, and I should just quit it all. And I've really realized in the last, especially 6 months or so, I've always known this, yeah, I'm young and I'll get it figured out. But I feel like recently I've really internalized it to where I'm much better about admitting, hey, I'm young and I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. And in 5 years, I'm going to be in a much different place, a place that I probably can't even imagine that I'm going to be in right now. And things are going to be different. And so something that I heard in regards to failure is that in this, I can't remember who said it, but it was for younger people or people who have been doing something for a shorter amount of time. So like, this kind of applies to you with like a three-year ultra running career. It's that sometimes, especially when we start things, we will run into problem after problem, and it will feel like all I'm doing is failing. But for example, in your case, after you've been running for 7 more years, when you hit your decade of as an ultra runner, like 2022, the year will literally be 10% of your entire career. And
like
if
that.
you only fail, like you said, you'll probably have a couple more hiccups and failures along the way. But if you only fail 10% of the time, like, that is a very small percentage of the totality of your career overall. And so I think sometimes when we first start things or we're early on, and we need the perspective that 3 years isn't really that much of time that has passed. It gets a bit easier to sort of play the long game and look towards a bigger timeline, and sort of chalk those things up to losses. And like you say, learn from them and try to apply them as best we can.
I like that perspective. And ideally, the longer I do this, the less mistakes I'll make. So yeah, that's a great perspective.
And something that I think a lot of people don't realize too is that you could literally do everything right and you could still fail. You could do all of your sessions, you could do all of your runs, you could hit all of your nutrition, and whatever happens, and something comes up, and then it makes you DNF, or it slows your time down or something happens, like you could do everything right and things could still go wrong. And that's just life. And it works out like that sometimes. But if you do what you're supposed to and you do all the things, then the majority of the time you're going to be successful.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what's also so, what keeps me coming back to is this, like, no one would do it if it was easy. Like, anything can happen in an ultra. Like, you can be the fittest you've ever been. You can put in all the work and do everything right, like you said. And then there's just, you step on a rock and you roll your ankle and then it's game over. Like, it can happen to anyone. It's not like that rock doesn't have it out for just you. It can really, like, anyone who toes the start line takes the risk that they're going to have a bad day, but they can also have a great day. And that's kind of part of the fun of it, is that you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Let's talk a bit about visualization. This was something that I thought was so cool about your 100K a couple weeks ago, is that I think visualization is a term that gets thrown around, especially in like the self-improvement space, that I don't know if it carries much weight to it a lot of the time. Like, people talk about it as a tool. You know, we only hear the stories about people who visualize something and it came true. How many people visualize something and then fail, right? Probably a lot. And another thing with visualization that is weird is, like, there's not really any proof. Usually it's like, I visualize this happening. Look at me. You shared on your Instagram after your 100K victory at Grindstone that you had embroidered, is that correct?
Yeah.
Embroidered this design of you breaking the tape and holding like your golden ticket in the air for Western States. And you did exactly that. You won the race, you broke the tape, you got your golden ticket to participate in Western States this year. And I just think that that's such a cool thing. So when did you first start thinking about this as a victory and something that you knew you felt like you had to accomplish?
I haven't always done that. I don't always, like, I don't have a, mental training practice that I do every day. I know a lot of people do that. I don't really. Maybe I should. But for this race in particular, I was coaching myself for it, and I've had a great coach who was awesome for a really long time. But with, like, the idea of doing this running thing for myself, I kind of started coaching myself, and I kind of, like, programmed my training so that I could do, like, every single time I did, like, the end of my workouts, I was kind of thinking, okay, this is the end of the race. Like, how am I going to feel? How am I going to, like, I even kind of thought about, how am I going to celebrate? How am I going to, like, what's the photo going to look like crossing the finish line? Things like that, like little silly things. So I'm like, I didn't share this at all before the race because it's kind of embarrassing. I'm like, I don't want to come off cocky or too confident because there are some fast women on the start line. And by no means was I 100% certain that I'm going to win this. But I really envisioned myself winning it because I wanted a golden ticket for a while now. And I've come close a couple times. And I knew that if I had a good day, I could do it. And I just wanted to kind of talk this good day into existence. And it worked. But like you said, how many people visualized their race and it didn't work out? We don't know. So I do think it works. My good friend is a neuroscientist who tells me it does work. So I believe her. And it's just a fun thing to kind of, like, the reason I put it on my shirt was literally so during the race, if I have a low point, I can look at it and remember what I came here for. And I did that. It was a great race and I didn't have many low points, but at some point it was still in the first half where I was kind of in the back part of the top 10, I think. I was like, there's so many people in front of me. This is really hard. And I looked at it, I'm like, no, I can do this. I just have to work my way up there and I can make this visualization happen. And it just gives me motivation. I don't know exactly what it does in my brain, but in this instance, it really worked. And I did it a couple of times before. And the more I believe in it and the more I really the more I really envision myself doing it, the more it works during the race. It might not always be the exact outcome, but when I visualize myself having a good race, I usually have a good race. If I'm scared and nervous and doubt myself, it's a lot easier to quit, because then you go into the race and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can do it. And then you're halfway through and it's hard. And then you're like, duh, like I knew I couldn't do it. So for me, it's always better to go into a race confident, without many doubts, and just excited to do it.
You said you've done the visualization before. Do you mean, spending some time thinking about how you want things to turn out, or sort of creating those physical reminders for you to look at while you're out there on the trails?
The physical reminders I only did once before, but it was more like a fun little thing to do. Before that, it was more so just in my brain. Like when I ran Javelina, the 100K, I visualized myself winning and breaking the course record. And I did, but it was really hard. Like that race was awesome, but I completely blacked out like the last quarter mile. I have no memory of what happened. But I like to think it happened how I visualized it, because it did end up working out. But yeah.
I think the physical reminders are cool. When I did my 100-miler, I wrote in Sharpie on my arm, "Face the Dragon," and I've since tattooed it on my wrist. And for me, it's like, I think it's a cool reminder, number one, but two, to me, it's just kind of a reminder of this thing that I accomplished, and I think just having something every time I look down at my arm, and by the end of it, I sweat so much that it was just like lines. You couldn't read it anymore. But just that I could see these like Sharpie lines on my arm, and I knew what it was there for. It helped. And I suffered a lot during that race. And I thought at times that it would be better if I just rolled over and quit. But there was definitely lots of moments where I would look down at my arm and I would say, you know what, like, this is what you're out here for. It was supposed to feel like this. And you got exactly what you asked for. And so I think physical reminders are pretty cool, especially when you're a creative person like yourself and you make a cool design for was it on your shirts or your short?
My shirt. Yeah.
Okay.
I like them too. I think it helps because like even if you like mentally visualize something, there's so much, distraction in your brain during a race. Like there's so many things to think about. Like the negative thoughts just creep into your brain, and it's a lot of work to keep the positive thoughts at the forefront. If you have a physical reminder, like if you write in Sharpie on your hand or you embroider something on your shirt, it's going to be there. Like it doesn't have to compete for space against negative thoughts, right? Like if it says "Face the Dragon" on your arm, it's going to say that. Like it's not going to change based on how you feel during the race. So it's just a constant, versus if you just think about things, it can get like muddled into different things.
Yeah. Have you heard the Mike Tyson quote? What is it? Everybody thinks they know what they're doing until they get punched in the face, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like that. When you start running, it feels like you get punched. It honestly feels like your whole body gets slammed by a dumpster at times, which is even worse than getting punched in the face.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything does go out the window. Tell me what's left for you. What would you still like to accomplish in this space? Like, I just think talking to how early on you are in your career, it's like such a cool opportunity to get to chat with you about this with so many things ahead.
Yeah, I'm just here for the ride, really. I mean, now I qualified for Western States, so I'm going to do that. That's a big goal. I will probably also do CCC at UTMB, just because I have the qualification now, and I kind of want to go back. Like I said, I did UTMB last year, and it didn't work. It didn't work out well, with the Raptor concerns and everything. So I'm thinking that the UTMB CCC double is reasonable, and if if I feel good after Western States, I want to do it. Other than that, I don't have any crazy like things I want to like for sure accomplish in the next like 5-10 years. I want to stay in the sport and stay competitive for a long time. I don't want to be just like a like one and done kind of like I'll do Western States and then that's it. I want to stay in the sport for a long time. I think that's the main goal, to stay healthy and stay competitive and stay in the right mindset to do this sport. I think that's the biggest long-term goal. Other than that, I enjoy just signing up for races when I feel like it. That's what I've done that this year a lot, is that I just sign up for races kind of last minute and then get really specific for them just a couple weeks out, like, I don't know, a week or two out or so when I'm like, all right, this is happening. I got to get ready for it. And I've been loving that, to just kind of treat it more as like an adventure and things are gonna, come around. And yeah, I've been really enjoying just, I don't know, going by how I feel and just doing the races that just sound right at the moment.
Yeah. That's something that I really think that I've messed up with my ultra running career. I did my first ultra in 2019 when I was 19. It was a 50 miler. And I was so tired of training by the time I was done that I stopped pretty much running entirely for like a year and a half, 2 years, which is when I started getting into CrossFit and coaching. And the only reason I did my 100 miler was because, like I said, a friend of mine asked if I would do it with him. I trained for it. And that was one of my goals, having done my 100 miler. I did take quite a bit of time off afterwards, but I'm starting to sort of get that itch again. And I want to get to a place where I'm just sort of running a couple times a week because I love to run. And then, that race sounds fun. I'm going to prep for it for like 6 to 8 weeks and then just do it. And whatever happens, sort of happens. I think that's like a cool place to be. And not just with athletics, but I think whatever work anybody listening does in their life, always preparing yourself to be ready for something is a good idea. It's like, think about people who are writers. They just constantly read books because they like to be immersed in that. And then all of a sudden they have this cool idea for a project and then they can sort of rein in their focus and write about that. But I think it's just a good idea to sort of be involved loosely with the thing, and you'll experience periods where you have a really clear and direct focus. Another thing that you said there too, which was intriguing, is you just kind of are doing it because it's fun. And I think that a lot of high achievers, talk to any quote unquote life coach and they say, we need to set these specific goals for you to accomplish within 3 to 5 years or this specific timeline. And pretty much everybody who I've talked to that's like a high achiever, that's a normal, regular person, it's like, no, it just sounded fun and I did it and, I won and here I am. And I think that that's sort of, number one, mentally a better place to be because you're not stressed about how long it's going to take to do something, but you really just doing something because you enjoy it and you just so happen to eventually get good at it because you do it a lot.
Yeah. And I think it's important to keep the spark alive. Like the joy of running is my main driving force and I don't want to lose that. And I feel like if I get like I guess it's like a weird in between because I am serious about running. I want to win races, but I also can't be too serious. Like I want the joy of running to be at the forefront and that's why I'm doing it. And anything that might happen. And that's just the way it is.
Is there anything like, I know you said you don't really have anything 5-10 years, but is there like a bucket list item that you would like to check off of your ultra running resume?
Well, Western States is one of them. I do eventually, which that might be one of those long-term kind of goals. And that's not necessarily as part of a race, but I do want to at some point do like a multi-day sort of thing. Like if that's a stage race or just like a super long, I don't know, wild 200-mile race. I want to do that at some point just to experience it It doesn't even have to be a race. Like it could even be like a fast packing sort of adventure. But that's something that has always kind of intrigued me. But there's just a lot of logistics involved, and I don't want to do it too early. I want to do it like at earliest in like maybe 3 years or so. Once I got more mileage under my legs and have more experience, and this just involves a lot of logistics too. So it's not like a near sort of thing. It's like in a couple years.
Yeah. I also wanted to mention this too, just for anybody listening. When people ask me, when I talk about ultra running, again, this isn't the community that I'm involved with CrossFit. Most people don't understand the ultra running community, especially like the more competitive side of it. And anytime anybody asks me about Western states, pretty much anytime anybody says Western states, Leadville, or UTMB, I always just say they're kind of like the Super Bowl of ultra running. Like everybody wants to do them. And so with your first place finish this past weekend, you have got admittance to Western states, which is very cool.
I always have a hard time explaining it to people. Like, what's the difference between Western states and UTMB? I'm like, they're completely different, but they're also both kind of the Super Bowl. Like it's, I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, that's the best analogy that I've been able to come up with thus far.
Yeah.
What do you hope that comes from the work that you do? And, I feel free to even mention the creative side of things that you do. What do you hope that the things that you work on accomplish?
I think, it's kind of similar with creative and running. Like, I just hope to inspire people in some shape or form. Like, I'm not like some motivational speaker of like by any means or anything like that. But if I can just inspire one single person to get out of the door and have fun in the mountains, or, pursue that creative like outlet that they always wanted to do and kind of take a plunge, then I'm happy. Like I just want to kind of spread the joy of running and creating and, inspire someone. If it's just a one single person or hundreds of people, I don't care. As long as my work means something to someone, I'm happy.
Yeah. I think if my words mean anything, that your sort of jubilance for the things that you do is infectious in that way anyways. And so just because like I can tell that you're super passionate about these things, and I think that has a bit of radiance to it that me and others probably latch onto and are inspired by.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
What does it mean to you to be a good person?
I thought about that question a bit because our world is pretty messed up in many ways. And I feel like being a good person can mean a lot of things because there's always more that we can do. Like I like to think I'm a good person, but I don't spend all my time volunteering. I don't donate all my money to causes. I could probably speak up more about things that are near and dear to my heart. But I think at the end of the day, what it comes down to is just striving to be your best self, to be kind, empathetic, and to just listen to people and be there for people. And that's all you need to do to be a good person. Like my hot take is that it's really not that hard to be a good person if you're trying. Like as long as you're trying to be good, you are good.
It's simple but not easy.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Lotti, before we sign off?
I guess if there's one thing I can say is that I want to like encourage people to just do what they always wanted to do. Just even if some decisions or some things might seem daunting, just try. Just take the plunge and see what happens. I'm an optimist, I feel like, so it's sometimes those kind of things are easy for me to say because I always kind of think things are going to work out in the end. But I really do believe that if you commit to something that you love, things are going to work out. So I believe that people should go for after what they want to do, always.
I think that's a very cool and sort of beautiful message to end on. Before we sign off, though, where can people find more from you if they're interested in checking out your journey and all the races and stuff like that you've got coming up?
I'm most active on Instagram. It's just at Lotti_Brinks. If you want to follow my running more, you can find me on Strava. That's just Lotti Brinks. And that's pretty much it. Those are the only two social media platforms that I'm on.
Yeah, cool. I'll include both of those in the show notes as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, Lotti. Well, if that's it, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for doing this. It was a pleasure to get to talk to you and get to know you a bit better. And I'm super grateful that we got to do it.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode of Good People. Make sure you check the show notes and follow Lotti on social media so you can follow along with all the races that she has coming up. If you are watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our weekly episodes. If you really enjoyed it, don't forget to share it with someone you love, perhaps your grandma. We'll see you next time.